It's January the 4th, 2019, and this is Battleground. Well, Happy New Year, one and all, and welcome to Battleground. I and the lovely Sheila Gunn Reid out in Alberta are co-hosting. We're filling in for Ezra, who is on assignment. That's sort of shorthand for he's taking an extended vacation. But Ezra never stops working, so we're going to try to do justice to his fabulous Battleground program. And I got to say, Sheila, I'm getting the first look of you in 2019, and all I got to say is, holy Pat Benatar, I am digging that look. I mean, that is amazing. Is that your look? Is that sort of a retro 80s look? You remember Pat Benatar from the 80s, don't you? There we go up on the screen. What do you think, folks? Got a dead ringer here, or what?
Well, David, truth be told, I got a new blow dryer for Christmas, and so I decided to learn how to use it because, as you know, you spent some time with me in Israel, and the natural state of my hair is, I would describe it as electrified muskrat. It's wiry, it's curly. There's a combination of like bad genetics and well water and just lack of knowledge about how to do my own hair happening. So my family got me this very fancy new blow dryer, and I'm committed to learning how to use it, and I think the results are working for me.
Well, I'm telling you, at the risk of creating a Me Too moment here, Sheila, it's working for me. The hair, the makeup. I mean, Pat Benatar and Deborah Harry of Blondie were the two women in the pop music industry in the 80s that I absolutely worshipped. So you've really got it. And I mean, I know you're younger than me, but you remember Pat Benatar's hits, you know, Love is a Battlefield, We Belong, Heartbreaker, Promises in the Dark. Is any of that ringing a bell?
Promises in the Dark is a softcore porn title. We talked about this off camera.
Well, you're supposed to preface a statement like that, Sheila, with, don't ask me how I know this, but Promises in the Dark is a softcore porn film. Anyways, enough of this nonsense. I'm like I said, I love your makeover, and although we took a holiday, I think it's safe to say, Sheila, insanity did not go on vacation over the holidays. You get back into the swing of things in January in the year of 2019, and it's just crazy town city, all the stories that are popping up. First and foremost, the year ended with a bang with an incredible video. I'm sure it's going viral by now. That was, I think it was first posted on December 29th. And it was a transgender woman freaking out after being misgendered. I didn't even know that was a word. It's kind of like when Robert Clemens said he misremembered something. That was a pseudonym for lying. But if we can run a clip of that, guys, Mr. Producer, to let the audience see this lovely lady being upset about being misgendered. Here we go.
Not doing credit. You're going to give me money back.
Excuse me, sir. There's a young man in here.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
I can call the police if you'd like me to. You need to settle down.
You need to settle down and mind your business. Okay?
Both of you guys?
Ma'am. Once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys. It was in general.
Right beforehand, you said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Take it outside. If you want to call me sir again, I will show you, sir.
I apologize. I apologize now.
I need your corporate number because I'm going to call them and talk about how it's misgendered several times in his store.
I apologize for that.
I need your corporate number now.
I can get it for you. Like, that's not a problem.
Get it for me now.
I can do that. I'm going to ask you to calm down and stop cussing.
Give me your corporate number. Well, I'm going to ask you for the 5th time to stop calling me a man, because quite clearly I am not.
And I apologize. I'm sorry for that, ma'am. I will get you that number. Is that okay?
Yes, get it for me now.
I'm asking you to stop
cussing.
Get
it for me now. I'm not cussing. I'm not cussing. Okay. Give me the damn number now, please. Ooh.
Ma'am, I apologize.
Ooh.
I apologize, ma'am.
Yes.
I will get you that number right now.
Okay.
Oh, Juliet, where art thou? Now, Sheila Gunn Reid, as a real female as opposed to a she-male, please, Weigh in on that clip, will you?
My first response when I watched that for the very first time was, there's a lot of testosterone still coursing through that individual. And then, do you remember the show Sally Jessy Raphael? It was like a daytime talk show, and back in the day, she once famously said, just because they make it in your size doesn't mean that you should wear it. Just because that individual is dressed like a lady does not mean that they are acting like a lady. And if you want to be treated like a lady, start acting like one. And that is not the behavior of a lady. That was ugly.
Oh, and you know, the other thing, and you know, it's funny you mentioned Sally Jessy Raphael, and of course there was Jerry Springer. But I'm going back to 20 years ago when that kind of shock talk TV was on the screens and getting big ratings. And it was kind of like, you know, if you think of society as a three-ring circus, that was the circus sideshow. It was the freak show, you know, where the geeks biting the heads off chicken would be. The thing is, 20 years later, Sheila, the freak show is now under the big tent. This kind of, you know, like what I call transanity is being normalized to the point where this person, so full of entitlement over being misgendered, being called sir instead of ma'am when he is indeed a sir, thinks that he can ream out an employee, probably making minimum wage, having to endure this, and then demanding the corporate email and phone number, and then actually committing a criminal act by kicking that display case. That's vandalism, right? He's destroying merchandise, but he's in the right. We in society are in the wrong, and this is being normalized. I think that's scary, Sheila.
Can we just stop for a minute and appreciate the fact that you and I are longing for the good old days of Jerry Springer treating these sorts of folks like the abnormalities that they are? This isn't normal behavior at all. This isn't how normal people act. This isn't how normal people conduct themselves. And back in the days of Jerry Springer, we rightfully treated this stuff like the freak show that it is. And now, 20 years later, everybody in Jerry Springer's audience would be accused of being a transphobe for looking at that stuff like it's strange. How far we've come. How far we've come. You know what? I want to, we have a super chat. And
oh, fantastic.
And off the top of the show, I know, since you and I are amateurs, and I forgot to tell everybody what exactly we're doing here. This is Ezra's weekly live show. But if you want us to read your comment aloud or to answer your question, you can actually do that with a super chat. We get to keep some of the money. YouTube keeps some of the money. It helps us pay the bills. And when you super chat, depending on how much you super chat, your comment will stay pinned to the top for a certain amount of time, and it'll be highlighted so that we'll read it. So if you want to help David and I show the boss that we aren't running the company into the ground while he's not here today, please super chat us and we'll answer all your questions and comments.
100%. And Sheila, you know, let's remind our audience, and we do adore your support and your financial gifts. Remember, we're going to be one of the few media outlets in 2019 not getting that $595 million taxpayer-funded bailout of the mainstream media, nor would we want it or ask for it. You know, that would put the same kind of brakes and governors on us as it does the mainstream media. We're completely dependent on you to help fund us, and you know, we thank you dearly for it. So Sheila, what is our first super chat of 2019?
Let's scroll back up. Oh, we got a couple super chats.
Beautiful.
just in time gives us $2.79 Canadian, and he calls that individual we just saw having a meltdown on camera Macho Ma'am Tranny Savage. And you know what? That sounds like something that you would say in one of your videos, David.
Yeah,
because
And also, it's something that you would say in jest, but, you know, the lunatic fringe out there keeps close tabs on this, because there's that kangaroo court known as the Human Rights Commission, and God forbid you offend anyone's feelings of what they think they are. So that's a great joke, a great play on words. I wonder how many years, Sheila, we can get away with broadcasting things like that on the air without being hauled in front of a tribunal.
You know what? I'm surprised we haven't been yet, to be honest with you.
Well, Ezra
every day I feel like we're living on borrowed time.
Indeed. How sad.
Okay. We have another super chat from someone called The Corker, very generous, $10 Canadian. And the super chat reads, CBC continues to bring lots of anti-Trump stories from the United States, Mexico border, but they are silent when it comes to telling us about the illegals coming across the Canada-U.S. border.
Of course, and you know, that just makes my point that I made earlier all the more relevant, Sheila, and that is when you are, I mean, the CBC, 'twas always thus, you know, depending on $1 billion plus in taxpayer-funded welfare. Are you really going to, you know, rock the boat? Are you really going to stir the pot in terms of pissing off, pardon my French, your financial benefactor, the Trudeau Liberals? So yeah, it's a pro-Trudeau narrative, especially since this Liberal government has absolutely no plans to defund or scale back funding on the CBC. On the contrary, it's going to boost funding, and it's going to boost funding to the other privatized mainstream media outlets, so they act more CBC-ish in their coverage.
Yeah, the media bailout is really just the CBC-ification, if that's a word, of the rest of the media. Look at how they refer to the illegal border crossers, the queue jumpers, the people who are breaking into our country every single day. They use the language dictated to them by the Trudeau Liberals. They use the political language given to them by the Liberals to refer to these people. They call them irregular border crossers instead of illegal queue jumpers and lawbreakers into our country. They just absolutely run cover for the Liberals. What's going on at the Canadian border should be one of the biggest scandals affecting our country, and there are just a select few in the media, us being one of them. Some people are doing some great work at my favorite paper, the Toronto Sun. But outside of that, everybody else absolutely toes the Liberal Party line.
100%. And Sheila, when we can't even refer to an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien as such, that we have to come up with words like I mean, I mentioned this last year on a commentary. Irregular? I mean, I've only been used to that terminology in terms of the fashion apparel business. I mean, I once bought a pair of Ralph Lauren socks that normally retailed for $6 for only $4 because they were irregulars. I mean, I couldn't tell what was wrong with them, but there was something in the pattern that was amiss. I refer to that kind of merchandise as irregular, not somebody who is a criminal. And yes, you are a criminal. If you are in a country illegally, you haven't gone through the proper channels, you don't have a passport, every second of every day you are a criminal. So all this nonsense that we hear from no one is illegal and all the bleeding hearts in terms of, well, you know, these people, they don't have any criminal record, they haven't committed any crimes here. I'm sorry, your very existence in our country without going through the proper channels makes you a criminal 24/7.
Well, and let's just pump the brakes here. If they are illegally in the United States, yeah, you're a criminal. Yeah. you came in here with, I guess, unclean hands. And secondly, some of these people who are crossing into our country illegally and then being processed at the border or later on down the line by immigration officials, we aren't running background checks on them from the countries that their countries of origin or the countries where they're trying to claim refugee status from. So Turkey, places like that, places like Jordan where they've lived safely for several years oftentimes. there's no requirement by Canadian immigration officials to pull a criminal history on those people. And I've seen it in the access to information documents that we get exclusively because we are literally one of the only people asking these questions. So when they say they aren't lawbreakers, they just want to start a new life, we don't know that.
And Sheila, I'm afraid, my friend, it's only going to get worse because, you know, we have this terrible third-party agreement, and I'd really like to go back in time and ask the authors of this agreement what in blue hell they were thinking, that the idea that somebody in the United States of America, as long as they cross at an irregular, there's that word again, an irregular border crossing, which describes 99.9% of the Canadian-U.S. border, you know, in other words, they're just going across at Roxton Road, for example, right? Then you're fast-tracked into the, you know, the refugee status, the migration point of view. Here's the thing. That loophole, there is zero political will on both sides of the border to get rid of the loophole. Trudeau says, hey, world, welcome to us, you know, the more the merrier. So he's on side with this, whereas President Trump, he's thinking, hey, you want our irregulars? You know, hey, look at your compass, follow the arrow pointing north and go to Canada, and, you know, we can divest our country of this social burden. So on both sides of the border, for different political ideologies, this loophole is not going to be closed anytime soon, Sheila.
No, and they're adding infrastructure at Roxham Road to sort of regularize it as a border crossing. They're building RCMP facilities there because there's just so many people coming through. Instead of building a fence, they're building processing facilities. And yeah, the Trump administration is looking at this like we're threatening them with a good time. Their illegal migrants are self-deporting themselves to Canada. So why would they stop it? And I think Canadian officials should really be prosecuting some people in northern New York State for human trafficking, because there's a whole network happening there that are bringing these people illegally into Canada.
Oh, it's a cottage industry. You know, it's unbelievable. I'll tell you, a couple of people I hope never migrate into Canada regularly or irregularly is a pair in, you came across this story, Sheila, and sent it to me last night. The headline is, Gay Man Impregnates Transgender Partner. I'm already confused reading the headline, but this is, it seems to be like, if we, you know, now look at that picture. Is that not, what is the most disturbing thing of all about that, Sheila? The pregnant
the sweat stains in the armpit.
Like, I can smell the BO from, you know, from the monitor, for goodness sakes, you know. You know, there is nothing more disturbing than seeing a man, whether, you know, usually it's a beer belly, but the fact that there's actually a fetus alive in that tummy is just so disturbing. Again, it's more irrational, totally abnormal behavior that is being normalized, that we're the haters. This is one of these instances I say, Sheila, where's the Children's Aid Society when you really need them?
I have another take on this too. The title is Gay Man Impregnates Transgender Partner Who Identifies as Male. This isn't anything special. Let's strip away like all the like gobbledygook and mumbo jumbo. This is a man who claims to be gay, and that's none of my business, but he had sex with a genetic female and they're having a baby. This is just normal. Heterosexual procreation. This is how God intended. Sure, the two parties involved are a little weird, and I'm going to be honest here, homely. But this is just regular baby making. This isn't anything special. This is just two people who had heterosexual procreative activities, and now there's a baby involved. This is the pursuit of specialness and weirdness in society coming full circle, so that now normal procreation is this thing that we have to write articles about. It's weird.
And, you know, what you were just saying, what struck me, Sheila, is that if one of them is gay or identifies as gay, yet he's had sex with what is biologically a woman, that means you're not gay, you're heterosexual, even though the woman, you know, looks like somebody loading cargo on Pier 5. But the, you know, the thing is I mean, you look at where they're living, it seems to be a trailer park in squalor. And as much as we're having fun about this, if this baby comes to fruition and is born, I feel so sad for the life this kid is going to have growing up in this environment.
I do too. I do too. And I worry that this baby is some sort of an experiment. Yeah. I anticipate that this, you know, is sort of a stunt in that pursuit of specialness and weirdness and headlines. And I worry that this child will be one of those poor babies who is raised without a gender, with some strange name and some made up pronoun, and will be paraded in front of the world. And so that when this child grows up, this sort of life of their childhood, which has been in the media, is going to follow them everywhere. So even if there is that boomerang effect where this kid just wants to be normal and left alone, it's never going to be.
Yeah, in a way, you know, I kind of feel for Octomom here, because she's like, hey, how can I outdo this kind of crazy? Oh, by the way, can we stop calling her Octomom? Because we always forget about the other 6 kids she had earlier. So I don't know what the Latin root is for 14, but whatever it is, she's the 14o mom. Not Octo, 8o mom. And, you know, they've just, like, she is so yesterday's news, because she was actually a regular run-of-the-mill biological female having a whole bunch of kids. Now, honey, we're interested in women that look like men having kids. So we don't talk about the Octomom anymore, do we?
David, you and I are probably literally the only 2 people in the world who routinely Google Octomom. I know I do. I'm like, you know, I wonder what she's up to lately. And you know what? I Googled her last week, and she is relatively normal. Like, she's doing normal stuff. Her kids seem to be doing okay. She's out of the limelight. That's when normalcy sets in. That's when you start making good choices, is when you start making choices for your children and not for attention. And, you know, God bless Octomom. She's doing the best that she can now. But I worry about this child, because I don't think that these people are going to regress from the spotlight.
Yeah, but the last I heard of Octomom, you said she's got a relatively normal life. I thought she was doing porn films, Sheila.
David, she...
Well, you're the one that brought up Promises in the Dark. I've never heard that title.
No, you brought up Promises in the Dark.
The song by Pat Benatar.
Sure. No, I Googled her last week, and she's just like living her best life now with her kids. They've all got a routine. She's not doing porn. She felt like people were exploiting her at the time. She felt like she was making bad decisions, starting with having so many kids all at once. And just people were taking advantage of her. So she's sort of dialed it back and had this like come to Jesus moment about her life.
Where's the money coming from, Sheila, when you have 14 kids?
I think that there were a series of lawsuits because she felt like people were taking advantage of her financial situation. She was making some money doing porn. Then she was on the stripping circuit. And now I think she's a personal trainer, but don't quote me on that. Okay. She did get her body back pretty fast. Like, I want to know what she was doing to have that many kids and then just like recover. I thought actually she looked pretty good.
Well, you know what? I'll have to go onto the Googler and look for some images myself after the show. Now, from gay men that might be heterosexual men or bisexual men, and women who are giving birth to babies but look like men, why don't we go from there to a white woman who thinks she's an Indian? And yes, I'm speaking of none other than Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, who was trying to get in touch with the common person over New Year's Eve. I think Mr. Producer has a clip of Elizabeth Warren about to crack open a beer to just show us she's just like you and I.
I will take a hard look at running for president.
Working families today face a lot tougher path than my family did.
In the Ralph's Club reference related to the consumption of alcohol. Did it relate to alcohol?
I like
beer. You haven't answered that.
I like beer. I don't know if you do.
Okay.
Do you like beer, Senator, or not? What do you like to drink?
Next one is...
Senator, what do you like to drink?
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer. Hey, Robert, my husband Bruce is now in here. You want a beer?
No, I'll pass on the beer for now.
You sure? Come on, say hello to folks.
Yes.
So, this is my sweetie.
Hello.
And I'm crazy about that.
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, enjoy your beer.
Who have we got here so far? Skylar and 14 others. Hello, Denise. Hi. Fortnite.
Did she say hi or how? I kind of misheard that. But you know, that clip makes me wonder, Sheila. Brett Kavanaugh, of course, was mocked and even vilified for declaring his love of beer. And if the guy likes beer, he likes beer. Leave him alone. He wants to drink some suds. Why is it that the left thinks that Elizabeth Warren drinking beer, well, this is a good thing because it just shows how normal and middle class she is like the rest of us? I mean, the hypocrisy is just incredible.
I cannot get enough of that video of her drinking beer. She is such a lizard. Like, she is like from outer space. The way she talks to her husband, like, thank you for being here, fellow human. That's your husband. Don't you live together? Like, thanks for being in the kitchen with me, buddy. I'm going to get me a beer because that's what other human beings do. They enjoy beer, don't you know? Like, she couldn't seem more weird and forced in that video. It's just perfect. It reminds me of when Theresa May tries to dance and she does that, like, weird robotic thing, like she's wearing a back brace and her arms are like all over the place. Or when Mark Zuckerberg, when he did that video about barbecuing, but you know he's barbecuing cats because he's from the same planet as Alf, because he's not a human being either. Like, I love when politicians do this kind of stuff to try to seem normal, because they couldn't seem stranger. From what I understand, she also went on to do a little cooking, but it's unclear if she was cooking her powwow chow recipe.
Oh,
she
yes. And you know, speaking of... Oh, go ahead, Sheila.
No, I was just going to say she was like 1/1024th cool in that video. It was so bad.
You know, that is, of course, the number you're referencing of her DNA match to Cherokee Indians. You know what? If we're going by that as a benchmark, if that makes you an Indian, then you know what? I'm a Cherokee because I once drove a Grand Cherokee made by Jeep for a week. So, you know, I think I'm more of an Indian than Elizabeth Warren is. But the sad thing is, I mean, and this speaks to how terrible things are in the Democratic Party, that I'm not even making a joke here, that Hillary Clinton might actually be the most promising candidate next year, because Elizabeth Warren has, of course, thrown her hat, or I should say, thrown her headdress into the ring, you know, to try to be the leader of this party. Going ahead, you know, in the months ahead, Sheila, who do you see emerging from this burning dumpster fire that is the Democratic Party down south?
I don't know. I would not be surprised if they put Joe Biden's head on a younger individual and bring out Zombie Joe. Like, they just keep recycling all these horrible rejected candidates, thinking that people will be suddenly hard of remembering and forget why they didn't like them in the first place. Who's that guy in Texas that ran against Ted Cruz? Beto O'Rourke. I see maybe Beto O'Rourke taking a run at it, but again, they're expecting people to remember or to forget why he was rejected by voters. And I don't know. It is a hot, flaming mess. And you know what? Maybe they do need a little more beer because they need to loosen up. They look a little crazy.
Well, you know, I think Trump, I know this election, the next U.S. election is 3 eternities away in the political timescale. I think he's going to have an even bigger victory than before. And I say this because the Democratic Party, it's not the party of classic liberals anymore. It is now a far leftist party, and people that, to use the old Oldsmobile saying, this isn't your grandfather's Democratic Party anymore. It is so far to the left that card-carrying Democrats in the United States are saying, I can't vote for this. And they're either going to sit on their hands on voting day or look for an alternative. And I think that's going to bring Donald Trump another resounding mandate until these Democrats can swing more back into the center realm, Sheila, than where they are right now, which is just so far left, especially in an American context.
Well, there's a whole generation, I think, of Reagan Democrats being created, those blue-collar Democrats who voted for Reagan because they voted for jobs. Those are being created, but back then they were actually being created by Ronald Reagan. This time I think they're being created by the Democrat Party, sort of leaving him in the dust and forgetting about jobs, forgetting about the working man, and voting for all these weird social justice things. And I just wanted to make another point, because as you were talking, I was thinking, the Democrats are the same party who consistently make fun of Donald Trump because he is this middle-class billionaire. He eats fried chicken, and he likes McDonald's, and he drinks soda on Air Force One. And they look down on him for that because he's authentic. And these people can't even fake a normal husband and wife relationship in their kitchen over a beer.
Yeah, no, I know. It looks so staged and phony and sterile and cold. And let's not forget, there is that insidious side of Elizabeth Warren. She claimed this native status to get a grant, even though she's from a millionaire family. And basically, she got that grant to, go on to I think it was Harvard, I believe. And so she profited from a lie and also kept a real American native out of the loop from getting that money that he or she really deserves. So I'm enough about Elizabeth Warren, Sheila. I just can't believe she shows her face in public with that kind of checkered background. And we should mention, we were talking about, the Mr. Producer has just informed me in my earpiece that we have another super chat. So take it away, Sheila.
Sure, I wasn't going to cut you off there, though. I feel like you were making a very salient point, but let's go. So TJ gives us $20 Canadian. Very generous, TJ. Thank you very much. And TJ says, Rebel rocks in 2019. Here's to another epic season of Generation Trudeau After Dark. That's one of my favorites. And for more of Sheila's integral access to info fights. If you don't get the info, at least their 300+ day delay responses say everything. Isn't that the truth? When they don't give me the information, that doesn't deter me. When they paywall me with an expensive bill, that doesn't deter me. Deter me from anything. It actually inspires me to dig deeper and harder and file more access to information requests, because I know they're very clearly hiding something, and 99% of the time they are.
Oh, and you know, it's funny, I've noticed, Sheila, that they're not even taking the time to redact with a permanent marker the information. They're just not even sending the page along in some cases. And I think that, you know, censorship, and that shouldn't be the case. These are public documents. And I know, you know, when you look at this story in the Toronto Sun you know, Prime Minister Trudeau, you can see he's got a beanie cap on with a propeller because he's talking about having a helipad at his cottage. You know, though that information came from Freedom of Information requests, but about 90% of it was redacted. And I can't for the life of me think that there was 90% of that information was somehow a violation of somebody's privacy. So they're really expanding that benchmark, I think, Sheila, as an excuse not to cough up and give people like you the information that the public, you know, so deserves.
Well, and the more we dig, the more we frequently see mixed in these massive email packages that they'll say stuff like, let's talk about this offline. So they're actually starting to implement countermeasures to transparency from people like us. Because they know we are going to do our best to find the paper trail. Yep. So they're stopping the paper trail.
Unbelievable. And speaking of censorship, that's a good segue for us to talk about another story. Daily Wire president suspended from Twitter for sharing Brussels sprouts recipe. Sheila, what sort of insanity is Twitter up to with this?
I'm going to cut you off, and I'm going to come back to this one because I think we have another super chat that will take us to another story that we sort of had in the works that we wanted to talk about. So, El Chupacabra, whose name I absolutely love hearing Ezra say every single week. I tune in just to hear him say it. Gives us $13.99, and he asks, how's the trucker convoy to Ottawa coming along? And then he asks us our thoughts on the Islamic Party of Ontario. So I'll take the first part, you take the second part. The trucker convoy to Ottawa, from what I understand, our friends at Rally for Resources and Canada Action are putting together a convoy of truckers to Ottawa in February. We are looking to embed one of us there, I think. You know me, I love the trucker convoys. Those are my people. I'm absolutely in my element, especially when they stage them at stockyards. I couldn't be like more absolutely in my element. But these trucking convoys are rolling along. They're protesting in favor of pipelines. I don't really see them stopping anytime soon because, quite frankly, they're out of work. They should be on a project, moving heavy equipment for our drilling rigs, but they aren't. So they have all the time in the world to protest, and they're going to continue.
Yes, it's a shame. But, you know, Sheila, I feel at this point, should we do some kind of public service announcement along the lines of, because all these truckers are coming into the Ottawa area, I don't know, lock up your daughters? Because aren't these the real deplorable rednecks that are threatening to women in the hinterland? Isn't that something along the lines of what our Prime Minister said a couple of months ago?
Yeah, he did say that. He said that, you know, that having large groups of men converge on rural areas will cause social side effects. But for me, when I go to these trucking convoys, I'm fighting off people who want to help carry my equipment because they're there treating me like a lady and trying to help me and treating me with absolute respect. And to be frank, I'm more concerned about the lady truckers driving into Ottawa than I am about the ladies who are in Ottawa being scared of the male truckers. And
Sheila, you know, of course, I was being facetious. I love these guys. They're the salt of the earth.
Yes.
They're not asking for a handout. They're just asking for the opportunity to work. And, you know, and it's up to this government, which it can do, which is to end this pipeline paralysis, as I call it, and get this Alberta economy back on its feet again. And yet, you know, you, as you said in your own words, you never felt safer. They were never so so nice and obliging. And I think back a couple of years ago, the one time a male, if we can call him that, he was so effeminate and he had so much body jewelry piercing his face, at a women's rally, no less, in Edmonton, that scumbag took a shot at you, punched you in the kisser, but no outcry from, there was no like hijab hoax apology from the Prime Minister there. There was no mainstream media outcry about what happened to you there, because even though this was a man beating up on a woman, you had the wrong political ideology and he had the right one, right?
Yeah, and there was no outcry even from the women there. They helped him escape after he assaulted me. I never heard from the status of women minister in Alberta, even though I was assaulted on the steps of her workplace. I'm not quite sure what she does around here. But that's just how it is. I'm more worried about leftist men than I am about right-wing men who just want their jobs back. And I'm going to put this out there right now. I could have tied Dion Buse in a knot that day. I could. But
you know what? I think that would be a pay-per-view. I really think you could take him. I mean, if the late great Mean Gene Okerlund was around, he could do the commentary. And you know what? Do you notice these guys on the left? They're always of a certain type. There is Dion that you mentioned, Jordan Hunt, who back in September kicked Marie-Claire Bissonnette in the stomach because she had the temerity to be anti-abortion at a peaceful rally. And it turned out months earlier, this guy pushed a woman into the way of a truck. Fortunately, there was no collision there. And yet, they're always very wimpy, effeminate, that they always have facial body piercings. I mean, what's the deal with that anyway, Sheila? I mean, is it because they can't go up against a real man that they got to take out their frustration and anger on a woman?
You know who they look like? They look like that pregnant man we talked about earlier. Like now that I'm thinking about it, they look like the pregnant fellow that we talked about earlier. Yeah. We have more super chats, so hang on.
Okay.
Okay. So Jim Trawick or Trawick, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, gives us $2.99. And he says, Sheila looks great. I am gay, so it's okay, right? You know what? That's even better because you're not coming on to me. But I also think that David looks great.
Wait a minute. If I'm sorry, but sir, if you say Sheila looks great and you're gay, that means you're not gay because I think Sheila looked great, but that's an appropriate response because I'm a heterosexual man.
No, everybody can see that there is beauty here. That's just, just how it is.
Sheila, I can't look at another man and say that's a good-looking man because
yes, you can.
No, I can't.
Yes, you can.
And I have this bloody argument. I have this bloody argument with Lady Menzoid all the time. I'll never forget Chatelaine magazine in the 1980s. They had the top 10 sexiest men in Canada, and one of them was Louis Del Grande. Now, if you don't know who Louis Del Grande is, he was an actor. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm not trying to take a shot at Louis, but pudgy. Male pattern baldness setting in, and I thought, wow, that's one of the top 10 sexiest men in Canada circa 1985. Give me a break. So yeah, I don't know what makes a good-looking man, and I think if you're a gay man and he's saying you look hot, that means this guy might not be a gay man.
No, there's objective beauty in the world. And first of all, you shouldn't trust those listicles because they're usually full of left-wing garbage. Those are the kind of listicle that would say that Relic from the Beachcombers is one of Canada's most attractive men because he's on the CBC, but would leave somebody like Peter MacKay off it. Okay, and certainly as a heterosexual man, you could say that Peter MacKay is objectively more beautiful than relic from the Beachcombers, right?
Well, Sheila,
Yes.
all I can say is, like I said at the beginning of the show, you are channeling that early 80s Pat Benatar look. And I'll tell you that for that, you're getting 2 thumbs up and 1 other appendage. Moving on, you were mentioning the Islamic Party of Ontario.
Hang on, we got another super chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
A couple super chats. We'll get to that story, I promise, El Chupacabra. Okay, so Lulu Bobs says, I just joined this chat. Have you spoken about the new Islamic Party of Ontario? What are your thoughts? Okay, one more super chat. Hang on. I promise we'll get to that. There's one more that said, from Jim Trawick again, so generous of you, $2.99, to drag David Menzies. He says, don't be jealous, David. You look great also. And I wanted to say that too. David, 2019 has been kind to you. You look lovely. Okay, let's talk about the Islamic Party of Ontario.
And thank you so much, Jim. And I hope that doesn't mean that you're gay, unless you are gay, in which case it's
Jim,
okay. Right?
Jim came out to us earlier.
Oh, he did?
Which is fine.
Oh, okay
He's
then.
the one that said.
How do you like that?
He's the one that gave you the compliment. Well, you're not following along. This is why I'm in charge of the computer.
I'm
okay,
so confused.
The story.
All this misgendering going on. It's so confusing. Yes, the Islamic Party of Ontario, it's being registered as an actual party. And there, folks, you can go online, you can see their platform. I have to say that I'm still not 100% sure that this is a goof, Sheila, that this is a grandiose media prank, maybe to draw out what they would consider to be an Islamophobic reaction, by certain people. Because when you read the platform, it is so over the top. I mean, there's even a line, this line was kind of, carbon dated best before its date, 15 years ago, where it says, we believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, and it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, right? And I thought that kind of got my spidey senses tingling. Yeah. But I have to say, so let's assume it is a legit party. Here's my take on it, and I was talking to Candace Malcolm about this yesterday. There you go, Adam and Steve. That's part of the official platform. Here's my take, Sheila. I think that the majority of Muslims who are not religious, who just want to get by living their lives and have indeed maybe come to Canada to flee from a Sharia law nation, are absolutely embarrassed and mortified by this kind of publicity. Secondly, I think the real Islamists we have to be worried about is not some nutbar who's maybe going to get 100 or 200 votes in the next provincial election, but it is those Islamists who work within the system to change the system. And I would put, I guess I have to be careful with my language. I'm not saying that she's an Islamist, but when you look at an Iqra Khalid, who's a Liberal MP, who comes out with Motion M103, these are the type of people that I'm worried about, the people that are ingrained in government, the people that can actually change our laws. And yet, if you look at Iqra Khalid, she's not wearing a burqa or a niqab, she's wearing makeup, very Western, but when you see what her real agenda is, she wants to put a little bit of Pakistan into Canada, which is, of course, the nation that she hails from. Anyways, that's my take on it. But one other point I want to make, Sheila. We showed a brief clip of Tariq Fatah's column from 2 days ago in the Toronto Sun. To my knowledge, as of today, that has been basically the only mainstream media coverage of the Islamic Party of Ontario. And I know what the producers at CBC and the editors at the Globe and the Star would say. They would say, you know what, come on, this is a no-hoper fringe party. It has no currency. It has no chance of forming a government. It would be a waste, it would be a fool's errand to give this 1 inch of coverage. And to that I say BS, because I'm telling you, Sheila, that if somebody started the new white supremacist party of Ontario, likewise run by a nutter, likewise a no-hoper, right? You know that would be front page on every Ontario newspaper, and the CBC would dispatch the live-eye to campaign headquarters. What's your take?
You know, I completely agree with you. I'm not convinced that this isn't just some sort of massive troll. And like you, I am more concerned about the Islamification of Canada so much as I am these concessions to radical Islamists all over the world that Canada is making. I'm concerned that Justin Trudeau is sending money to Hamas. That bothers me a lot. That money is then in turn used to terrorize our friends in Israel. That concerns me. I'm concerned about M103 because that motion in and of itself is ultimately the Sharia control of our language and the elimination of our ability to be critical of a religion. And I think the CBC coverage would be vastly different if Sheila Gunn Reid started the Orthodox Catholic Party of Alberta. Oh. I think I would be excoriated. I'd be eaten alive by the mainstream media. But because this is a different religion, one we're not allowed to talk about and one we're not allowed to be critical of, there's radio silence around it.
Indeed. And this doesn't fit into the mainstream media's idea of pro-Islamic diversity. When this guy's spelling out all his hateful rhetoric, you know, that it is misogynistic, it is homophobic when you read the platform. The mainstream media gets uncomfortable with exposing that kind of diversity, so we'll just ignore it and hope it goes away. And to your point of Justin Trudeau virtue signaling by doing things like, you know, giving money to Hamas, let's not also forget a very underreported story, I think, Sheila, is the Canadian peacekeepers in Mali. I have no idea what the connection is with Canada and Mali. This has been, you know, thank goodness there hasn't been any kind of tragedy of a soldier getting hurt or killed. But there's been, I believe, I'm going by memory here, around 170 peacekeepers have been killed in that part of the world. I have no idea what the hell we're sending Canadian men and women into a country like that where we have absolutely no connection with Mali.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same time, Justin Trudeau pulled out the Canadian Air Force from basically acting as the Air Force in the battle against ISIS. Yeah. There was a genocide going on there, and Justin Trudeau felt like it wasn't Canada's place to be there, but at the same time, we're endangering peacekeepers in Mali. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and it's virtue signaling, and it doesn't make any sense to a normal thinking person. But we have some more super chats.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being so generous.
Thank you.
Fraser McBurney gives $5 Canadian, and he says, Sheila, did you ever get paid from your lawsuit from that jerk being Dion Buse? I did. Now, we had an enormous amount of legal fees, 10 times what the actual reward was to me. And I did something charitable with it. I don't want to say what I did with it, but I did something very charitable with that money that Dion Buse would not appreciate me doing. A left-wing feminist would not enjoy what I did with that money. So I'm sort of proud of that.
And Sheila, I'm proud of noted that this was never a money grab for you in the first place.
No, not at all.
You just wanted a measure of justice.
No, that's exactly it. I just wanted my side of the story on the record, and I wanted a judge who saw that video to look at Dion Buse and say, you were not the victim here, that you should have kept your hands off her. I wanted the record set straight for all the internet truthers and CBC conspiracy theory authors. I wanted a judge who saw that to make a ruling, and that's what I got. And we also got a big whopping legal bill. But anyways, I think the truth was worth it in the end. We have another one, but I lost it. Okay, Donald Miles gives us $15 Canadian, and I don't see a super chat there. I don't see a question or comment. Thank you for the very generous super chat, and if I'll just keep watching out of the corner of my eye in case you forgot to ask us a question and see if I can catch it and read it out for you.
Well, Sheila, maybe he can weigh in then on your Brussels sprouts recipe story that ended up getting the Daily Wire president actually suspended from Twitter. What was that about?
Yeah, so the Daily Wire president was suspended from Twitter because he was critical of a Brussels sprouts recipe. I mean, and this is what he said. He said, in response to somebody else who works for the Daily Wire. So this is like the jokey back and forth that colleagues do, sort of like you and I suppose. Jeremy Boring, he wrote about this Brussels sprouts recipe. He said, even better, coat with melted butter, salt, pepper, paprika, and a dash of Worcestershire. Nobody knows how to say that word. Sear in cast iron in bacon grease for 30 seconds or until brown, then throw them away and burn your face off with the hot pan because even that would be better than Brussels sprouts. And he was suspended for self-harm because of that. So some like left-wing busybody reported him for that. And of course, Twitter, without investigating, because this is clearly a conservative individual from Daily Wire writing this, so it's their natural reflex to just suspend and that's the end of it. And I think, like I said earlier, I'm operating on borrowed time on Twitter. If you follow me, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm pretty jokey on Twitter. And I've said worse things about Better Vegetables. So I'm just waiting to be suspended.
You know, Sheila, two things. One is I'm wondering if it's a human being or some computer program that looks for triggering words that results in the suspension, and I mean that. I'm not certain, and I say that because I did a commentary last week. It was in regard to somebody. She wants to remain anonymous. She's very dear to me. She went onto Twitter, and it was about Sarah Thompson. Now, Sarah Thompson is a failed Toronto mayoralty candidate. She seems to have a little cottage industry going of accusing people of sexually harassing her. It was the late Rob Ford. Most recently, it was Steve Paikin, who I hope sues her butt off this year when that investigation is completed. Steve Paikin is a TVO journalist. Believe me, folks, if there's one journalist in all of Canada who is most unlikely to sexually harass somebody, it is Steve Paikin. He is the biggest square out there, and I mean that as a compliment in terms of he would self-identify as a square. It's outrageous. This person on Twitter, Sheila, said, because of all these allegations, none of them have been proven, and because of her behavior on other files, that Sarah Thompson should hang her head in shame. 7-day Twitter suspension, Sheila, for the same reason, self-harm. They thought hanging her head in shame was the same as being hanged by a noose. I mean, this is preposterous.
You know what, though? That brings me to the next, our next story, and that was about the police cautioning that man.
Yes.
That failed municipal candidate, another failed municipal candidate here, who doxed the parents of Sam Oosterhoff. He published the addresses of Ontario Conservative MPP Sam Oosterhoff's parents, and he published their phone number on Twitter. And he directed people to go to their house over Christmas and harass them because he thinks that they raised someone who's bigoted, misogynistic, and homophobic, which means in internet parlance, Christian. And I looked into it. He is still Twitter verified. If that's not targeted harassment and incitement to harass, I don't know what is. And he is still not, he's not banned, he's not anything, he's still verified, which means his harassment is also verified by Twitter. So I think there's a clear liberal bias to Twitter. This isn't an algorithm, this is just anti-conservatism.
And Sheila, in the bigger picture, I want to talk about how those on the left, they don't seem to have any boundaries when it comes to invading the personal privacy of right-wing politicians. I mentioned the late, great Rob Ford, how the media would camp out at his house and his mother's house to get a gotcha moment from Rob Ford. 2 months ago, I did a piece for Rebel where the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty was picketing Doug Ford's business, Deco Labels. It was a major fail. First of all, they went on a Saturday when Deco was closed. Secondly, about 5 kilometers away, Doug Ford, their target, is at the Ontario PC convention. And folks, if you want to see some lunatic comments made, please conjure up that video. But I don't see the converse happening on the right. People going to left wing, and certainly Premier Wynne was pretty much vilified at the end of her term by last summer, and you didn't see this kind of disgraceful behavior there. But we'll leave it at that because I understand we have 2 more super chats, Sheila Gunn Reid.
Right. We have 2 more super chats, and we're running out of time because this is the fastest hour I put in at work ever. It's so much fun. Okay, so Space Dave 2000 gives us $2 Canadian, and he asks, looking like Trudeau might not win the election. Don't count on Trudeau losing the election. Yep. He's unpopular somewhat right now. I think his popularity is sort of where Harper's was going into Harper's last election. But do not underestimate just how many people are willing to continue to vote Liberal in the east of the country. And do not underestimate how Andrew Scheer will fail to capitalize on Trudeau's gaffes. Yeah, sadly, if I had to make a prediction now and we're an eternity away, I would call it as a Justin Trudeau Liberal minority government, Sheila. That would be my best guess. Yeah. Me too. Now we have one last one from Sarah Reason. She gives us $5. Thank you very much, Sarah. Sarah writes, I fear that the far left will threat the autism community into their agenda. If that happens, what is your thoughts on this? I don't know to what exactly you're referring, but, and we are out of time. But I do know that there are some concerns from parents with autistic children who feel as though they are being forced into sort of a transgender narrative a lot of times at schools. I've heard from parents who have experienced this firsthand because especially autistic girls, they sort of think a lot like boys and are far less emotional. And so activists are saying, well, maybe they are boys, as opposed to maybe you're just a regular autistic girl. And I really fear for those children. Indeed, and there has been medical studies about that. But, you know, and it's something I'd love to get into because I think I did a commentary last year on this very issue. You know, Sheila, we got to wrap it now. Like I said, I am so digging this early 80s Pat Benatar look. I mean, folks, feel free to weigh in if you think I'm off my rocker or Sheila's a dead ringer. And I'll leave you with the chorus of her biggest hit of all time, which was Hit Me With Your Best Shot. And here's to you, Sheila Gunn Reid. You're a real tough cookie with a long history of breaking little hearts like the one in me. That's okay. Let's see how you do it. Put up your dukes. Let's get down to it. Hit me with your best shot. There you go. You can see, folks, why I didn't choose a singing career. And that wraps up Battleground. Happy New Year to one and all. Thank you so much for your generous contributions. And I hope Sheila will be, and I will be back here in Ezra's absence. Or heck, let's cross our fingers. Let's hope we get our own show together, Sheila, in 2019. I love spending this hour with you. So from Rebel World Headquarters and the province, somewhere deep in the hinterland of the province of Alberta, it's Sheila Gunn Reid and David the Menzoid Menzies signing off. Have a great New Year, everybody. Take care.